We are live on the YouTube home for No Sleep Teal. Travis Reier, Evan Reier. A big night for NFL fans, a big night for Jacksonville Jaguar fans as we get confirmation on dates, right, Evan? We pretty much knew the opponents
Yeah.
going into this Wednesday night, but it becomes even more real. And again, just just great genius from the NFL. They kind of stage this stuff throughout the offseason, keep you on that hook, keep you coming back for more. And that's what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, the MLB's punching at air right now. They can't get anybody to watch Dodgers Giants or whatever game's on right now. They're
You
they're
got the
flooding
NBA
on
playoffs right now.
NBA
The
playoffs. I mean,
NFL's
God
like,
forbid.
yeah,
Yeah.
sucks to
I
suck.
mean, it is interesting that knowing. I mean, it's yeah, it is wild that no other. You could even still say it's like, oh well, you're exaggerating. People are still watching the NBA playoffs, but it's like no other sport. The NBA schedule release, nobody cares like this. You know what I mean? Like the MLB schedule release, like nobody. It's just different. And yeah, they're fantastic at what they do, and I can already see the schedules rolling in. We're right at 8 p.m. and they're already yeah, it's actually officially out here. Mike DiRocco from ESPN already has it up. So if you want to go look that up on Twitter, Dad,
We
I
can
can
do
actually
that.
send that to you, and we can immediately
You
start
know,
breaking this down.
it's interesting though how the dissemination of the information comes about because you do have major partners that you're working with,
Yeah.
ESPN, right? So it's an interesting call. Do you watch the NFL network? Do you watch ESPN? You would think the NFL network, that's the network of the National Football League. But when you think about what ESPN is paying
Oh
for
yeah.
some of these rights and others. It kind of makes some sense there in terms of how it's uh, being disseminated. And there you go. You mentioned it. D Rock with some of that drop right now, actually, all of that drop. And we're going to bring that up. We're going to bring it right up on the screen with Evan and myself. There it is, Evan,
Perfect.
courtesy of Mike DiRocco, ESPN.com. Jaguars 2024 season. How about a little Trevor and Tua to kick it off down in Miami, Evan, on
Yeah,
September the 8th? That'll be a warm one too, won't it?
that was one of the leaks that actually turned out to be correct. So that's it's cool to see that. I am tempted to go to that game. It will be warm, but I've always wanted to go to Hard Rock. I've heard it's a great place to watch a game. I think it's cool, and that's also just going to be a very good game. And talk about a test for that Jaguars defense to open things up. I mean, you are that secondary, like Ronald Darby, welcome to Jacksonville. Jarian Jones, welcome to Jacksonville, because you are going to have a pretty difficult opening task. Miami, had a limp finish to their season last year. So did the Jaguars. But that is still a offense that you cannot, you can't blink. I mean, you really have to be ready to go. And in all phases do too, because Raheem Mostert, that running game is also very, very dangerous. A Chain. That dude is insane. So,
Love Devin
um,
A. Chain.
yeah.
And
So
and of
this,
course Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going to be a serious challenge, and
Odell
it's
Beckham
a
Jr. down there now. How about that?
yeah. The thing is that simultaneously, it's also a moment for the Jaguars offense to start strong because Miami's defense isn't exactly insane.
Not the
That'll
72 Dolphins. Yeah.
Yeah. That ought to be a high scoring contest. I'd love to see what the opening total for that is once we get closer to the season, see what Vegas thinks about that. Um, but yeah, road trip to start the season, staying in the state of Florida, but then they come back to Jacksonville in week 2, and you welcome the Cleveland Browns, who whooped that butt last year when he played the
Yeah.
Jags, and is a team that really feels like they're pretty built. Feels like they're at the level to keep competing year after year, and that it's almost the opposite. Week 1, you've got one of the hardest offensive tests of the year. Week 2, you might have the toughest defensive test of the year.
Yeah, just Miles Garrett and those
Yeah.
guys. No worries, right? No worries
Oh
in going
man.
against that Cleveland defense. But yeah, in the opener, you got Tua and Trevor getting back together once again. Saw that one firsthand. back in January 2019 out in Santa Clara when the Clemson Tigers took care of the Alabama Crimson Tide in that college football playoff national championship game. Could it be two quarterbacks, too, that have new deals in that
Yeah.
season opener between Trevor and Tua? And those situations that their teams are looking to clear up. Cleveland will be fascinating. Obviously, you expect Deshaun Watson to be back and healthy. That will certainly be different from last season.
Yeah, I mean, and this is kind of I mean, his contract's fully guaranteed, so they're riding that out, regardless. But that is definitely kind of a change, and he's kind of entering a year where, like I said, even though that contract is locked in, I mean, he's not looked like the guy that used to
No.
scare the Jags when he was in Houston. So it's one of those things where you're kind of like, well, we can still win this game even if the Browns defense is at its best. But that is, I mean, for non-division opponents, that's a challenging kind of first 2 weeks, and for different reasons. And what's funny is that it doesn't really get better.
It
It doesn't get
doesn't.
easier
No.
because then the following week, the first primetime game of the year for the Jags, they go to Buffalo, Monday Night Football. You rather go to Buffalo in September, rather than, December. But that is going to be another really, really tough game. I mean, that's playing up there is always hard, but prime time early in the season, a lot to, be excited for both teams. The Jags are, let's say worst comes to worst, you're 0-2 and you go into Buffalo. I mean, that becomes like a playoff game almost is what that's going to feel like.
Yeah, and some recent Bills are going to be going back to Orchard Park,
Yeah,
aren't
yeah.
they?
Gabe Davis revenge game.
Mitch Morse,
Mitch Morse revenge game. Is if
absolutely.
sinners can have revenge games. I don't know what that looks like, but
And you look at this first 4-game stretch and the month of September, 3 of the first 4 on the road.
yeah,
And those 3 road games at Miami, at Buffalo, which is a new stadium team, are, kind of like the Jags in that regard. We'll get into more of that with the stadium situation with
yeah,
Jacksonville coming up later in the show. But you go to Buffalo then on a short week because you play Monday Night Football on the road. You go back on the road to Houston to take on those Texans. What have become really here quickly the hated Houston Texans, I think, if
yeah.
you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan.
Absolutely. I think in the AFC South, you kind of just rotate on your hate levels. Like, I think a lot of Jaguars fans my age hate the Titans the most due to, just the various reasons. Of
Heartbreak,
course,
man. Yeah.
heartbreak and 1999 and all that different stuff. But Houston is now, like they're the kind of in the driver's seat of the division, at least as things stand, just because of how good CJ Stroud looked. And, while we did win on the road in Houston last year, that was kind of a steal, the kind of got lucky at the end there with the kick and whatnot. So it's definitely one of those that's, again, really going to be a challenge. Even if, honestly, I think you bite if someone tries to tell you, hey, the Jags are going to go 2-2 through that 4-game stretch, you bite their hand off. Like you try to reach for it so bad. Like you're so happy with that because when you've got 3 games on the road, one of them at one of the toughest places to play in the NFL, and then all 4 of those teams made the playoffs last year. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's as difficult as it gets for September.
And then you think about this before the end of October, you will also have spent 2 weeks in London.
Yeah.
So 3 true road games in the first 5, followed by 2 in London. 1 a home game against Caleb Williams and those Chicago Bears at Tottenham there
Well,
in
that's
the
actually
London
the road
area.
game, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the road game. The home game against the New England Patriots going through a quarterback change once again, it appears, are the Pats. So you think about winnability, I guess we can say, Evan, of these first 7. Miami on the road, Cleveland in Jacksonville, Buffalo on the road, Houston on the road, Indy at home on October the 6th, Chicago in London, New England in London. What right now, just looking at this thing well in advance, those 7 games, what are you happy with after the stretch of those first 7 in terms of a record?
I I really think that 4-3 is solid through that stretch. Now that's not division winning
Yeah.
material, but I think that it's at the very least, okay, we've got our head above water. I think 4-3 is what I would be happy with. I wouldn't panic at 3-4. Uh, but I think they're in trouble if it's 2-5. I mean, 2-5 would imply that you probably won maybe one of that crazy first four, and then you probably beat Indy, and then somehow you lost to Chicago and New England and London. Fortunately, the Jags have been so good, over there. They, won 2 games last year. These teams this year, I mean, Chicago and New England are new quarterbacks, rebuilding kind of situation. Like, don't get it twisted. They both have some talented players, but you got to feel really good about your chances against New England. And I would honestly, I would even take the Jags against Chicago if it was in Chicago. Like,
I think the
just
way
has,
this looks to me, you need to win both games in London. I
yeah,
mean, you need to
yeah,
beat
for
a
sure.
rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. Now, he may be CJ Stroud all over again. Um, and you need to beat Drake May if
Yeah,
he's the guy for New
yeah.
England. You need to go 2-0. You need to be the UK national champs coming
And
out of
they did
that
that
2 game
last year. They can
stretch.
definitely do it.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
you
those are
know,
very winnable games. And then, as you said, hold serve at home, Cleveland, Indianapolis. That gets you 4 of the 7 as far as wins. And then, if you
you're
can
fine.
pull one out from Miami, Buffalo, Houston, pretty good shape.
Yeah, I think 5-2 is very reasonable. I do think that. I think 3-4, 4-3 is the most likely, but I think 5-2 is very possible. But like I said, so is 2-5. 2-5 could absolutely happen if they f around a little bit. That's the thing is like it's with all sports, momentum is so crucial, and that is why winning one of those first 2 games against Miami and Cleveland, I think is as maybe more important than winning
I
against
think it's
Buffalo or
important from a
Houston.
psyche perspective,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Like
you
you're talking
can't
about with confidence, because this is a team that went into the offseason on a
with
major downer, right?
yeah, yeah. And then and started, last season with major confidence after the run before that. It's you see it happen. And momentum can flip over the course of a game, and a team can just fall off the wagon. You can't start off the wagon. You at least need to get the wheels rolling. And that's I think the Cleveland game, between those 2 games, I feel better about the Cleveland game. But yeah, you got to win one of those two, and then if you can just kind of chill, like you said, really between Indy, Chicago, New England, I'm expecting 3-0 over that stretch. I mean, I'm expecting 3 wins. Now,
Reasonable.
Indy's not a pushover. I mean, that's not going to be a walk in the park.
It's in
But the
Jacksonville,
Jags
though.
also dominate Indy at home. Like,
Yes, they
they
do.
rarely ever lose to Indianapolis at home. So, that's one that you really want. And then once you get back from London, you kind of have another pretty challenging game because Green Bay comes to town. Jordan Love looked like, a completely different player. The last month of the season last year. I mean, they damn near took down the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs. And, when they welcome Green Bay, once they come back, I mean, that's going to be another really big game.
It is. And it's just the craziness of the NFL. When you look at these first 7 games, when you look at these first really 10 games,
Yeah.
just 2 division games in the first 10. So even if you do start 2-4, 2-5, if the right two are Houston and Indianapolis, you're
It's
2
like,
and 0 in the
okay,
division. Now
yeah.
you got to win more than just your division games, but it is backloaded, it seems. Once you talk about a defining stretch, and I wanted to get into that with you too, but we'll go through the remainder of this list right now. Green Bay in Jacksonville on October the 27th. Then you immediately go to Philadelphia. Should be some pissed off Eagles going
Oh
into the
yeah.
2024 season. Kind of like the Jacksonville of the NFC, right? Philadelphia, how
Yeah.
that went down to end the 2023 campaign. Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football. So you're going to have a couple of primetime games as we know it right now.
Both on the road
Buffalo,
though.
Monday Night Football. Philly Sunday night football, both those games on the road. So as it sits right now, no primetime games, I guess, Evan.
And also no Thursday night football games, which feels like
No,
maybe the first time in like
that is
as
interesting. Yeah,
in a long, long time. The Jags, couldn't get on Sunday night football, couldn't get on Monday night football for a decade, and they would just throw us the bone with the Thursday night game. It's very weird to not see a Thursday night game on the schedule. And like you said, of course, as the season goes on, there could end up being more primetime games, right? Like the Jags could definitely get flexed into one of those.
right.
Especially since you play so many division games late in the year, those have more implications depending on, if you kind of get into what we experienced with the Jags Titans in 2022 when they got flexed to Sunday night football in the last week of the year because it was basically a division championship game. But yeah, that Philly road trip, that's a tempting one. That's one that I might want to go do because I've never been to Philadelphia. I've never seen a game up there, and I'm
Woo.
down to get yelled at and
Yeah.
put through the ringer.
Wear a
Uh,
helmet, mouthpiece, chin strap, the whole thing, Ev.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Got to pad up, Kevlar, whatever
Go
you
to
have.
gyms in South Philly pregame, get a steak, a
Yeah.
cheesesteak.
Oh
Yeah.
man, that sounds so good. I haven't eaten dinner yet, so that's you got to take it easy on me. But then after the Philly game, that Minnesota game kind of looms as like a very very much like a if you don't win that one, something's in trouble. I mean, Minnesota's not quite in the same spot as maybe say New England, but they're definitely rebuilding. Definitely not
Kirk
really supposed to be.
Cousins in Atlanta now.
Yeah,
So
this isn't supposed to be like a competitive team this year. That's definitely a game that you think you want to win. They could still cause some problems, but there's not even a whole lot to say about that one, in my opinion. Now, the road game at Detroit the week
it's
after,
not Thanksgiving,
it's not
the road
Thanksgiving.
trip.
All the leaks about the Jags playing on Thanksgiving were wrong. Which is I was saying this before we recorded. Most years the schedule like is basically out the day before, like everyone's got it out and all that different stuff, and we know most of the games. This is like one where again, like just about like several different predictions about this schedule and several other schedules around the NFL was just completely off base or false. Yeah, the Jags are not playing on Thanksgiving in Detroit. They're going to play the week before on the road against the Lions, which, of course, I mean, that's going to be difficult. Now, I almost rather play them not on Thanksgiving. I think that's probably a good thing. But they just paid Jared Goff. I mean, the offense, the defense, they looked
They're
like they were
built to
really
win a
hitting.
championship right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're in their win now window, and that's as difficult, that's as good as a team really as the Jags are probably going to play this year. I mean, they don't have somebody like the 49ers and Chiefs who, kind of as we saw last year, were kind of just a head above pretty much everyone else. But Detroit, in Buffalo are kind of those other than, maybe Houston, maybe Philly, those are kind of the best teams that the Jags are going to play on paper coming into this year.
I guess if there's a silver lining after last season's affair here in Jacksonville, at least I don't see the San Francisco
Yeah,
49ers
Jesus.
on this
I mean,
schedule.
oof.
Ooh, you talk about a
We're
demoralizing
dodging,
defeat. The
Hey,
bye week, it comes on November the 24th, the open date. That looks like a pretty good spot to me. Yeah, you're going to play 10 in a row. That's going to be pretty grueling, especially when you consider two of your three going into the bye are going to be road games at Philadelphia and at Detroit. But in terms of where it falls on the schedule, yeah, I guess a little bit earlier may have been preferred. Obviously, you'd love to have had it after week 8, but with a 17 game schedule, this is pretty close to right there in the middle.
no, I think it's a great spot. Not just because, yeah, like beggars can't be choosers or whatever. I mean, if you're not getting 8 or 9, 7 or 10, week 7 or 10 is as good as it gets. And not to mention too that it's on Thanksgiving week, which as we've learned, as with people that we know that work in the industry, guys really do like having some off time during the holiday. Like if that
Yep.
syncs up, that's great. That's definitely going to be a morale boost no matter what's going on. And then most importantly, though, it's right before Houston at home. And a game that is absolutely, if the Jags are doing well or mediocre at that point, that Houston game is going to be a must win. And I mean, it's pretty much a must win no matter what happens in any shape, form, or fashion. Having the bye week right beforehand, you like that. You definitely, you definitely prefer that. The only other time I think would be better would be maybe before the Detroit game, but I like I said, I think that's as good as really as the Jags can hope for.
Yeah, and you think about, as you said, Houston coming into town on December the 1st. If you can get to that bye at like 6-4, even, Evan,
Yeah,
even if you're 5-5, you get to the bye, you got a chance to sort of recover. Hopefully, you're still relatively healthy in terms
yeah.
of major injuries and those type of things. And then you're still home for Houston coming off of that bye. And then maybe you can really hit the gas before you go to Tennessee. You get the Jets at home, Aaron Rodgers. How about that? Vegas on the road, Tennessee at home on the 29th of December, and then at Indianapolis. So I agree. I think that bye week, if you're never going to have it exactly when you want it, and it changes. It literally changes in real time for teams. There's teams that are playing great; they don't really want to take a week off. There are teams that aren't playing great or they're beat up, and they want that bye week, even as early as week 5 or 6, maybe sometimes. But just looking at it here in mid-May, that seems to be a pretty good spot. So, Evan, let's talk defining stretch. Maybe we already hit on it. Maybe it's the first 3 or 4 when you
Yeah.
look at this thing. Boy, you don't ever like to put that much emphasis on the opening month of the season, but history tells us if you get out 0-3, even 1-3, it's going to be hard to be a legitimate contender where AFC supremacy and positioning yourself for the postseason is concerned.
Yeah, I think there's a stat that people point out every year when we get into week 2, week 3, which is that like 85% of all NFL teams in history that start 0-2 don't make the playoffs. Like
Hmm.
so, you're literally looking at close to a 1 in 10 chance of making the playoffs if you don't if you start 0-2. So not only that first four, but those first two kind of feel like I mean, yeah, don't get it twisted. It's there's definitely the month of December, like those last 6 games or so is also critical because one, it's 4 division games and some very winnable games. That is, also very, very important. But I just don't see how it's not all about that first 4 games. I mean, it is such a challenging start to the season that if the Jags do, let's say, go 3-1 through that stretch, then you're like, oh wow, like okay, like we are like really, really in the driver's seat, and you can feel really good. Now that being said, the Jaguars had a hot start last year, and then kind of or hottish start last year, and then fell away. So you never know, but. Yeah, I think it's got to be, if we're talking about a defining stretch, I think it's got to be the first 4 games of the year.
Very interesting, too, I think, where the quarterback position is concerned. Because if you go ahead and do this second deal with Trevor, and it's expected to be a big one in terms of the figures involved. You look at these first 4 quarterbacks, right? The Jags are likely to see Tua in Miami, Deshaun Watson healthy with Cleveland, Josh Allen, Buffalo, CJ Stroud. If he's the guy that we all still think he can be, it needs to show up right out of the gates in
No,
September.
100%. I mean, it's not only those, that kind of that a lot of the games this year kind of represent that where it's like, with Miami, and Buffalo, it's, uh these are quarterbacks that have also won Pro Bowls, or in Josh Allen's case, have been like MVP material, and then CJ Stroud's on the up and coming. But also, there's all in that same like kind of juxtaposition when you're comparing Trevor Lawrence to the rookies that he's going to play this year. When you're Trevor versus Caleb Williams, Trevor versus Drake May. If Drake May and Caleb Williams outduel Trevor, I mean that's a oof. Like you don't feel great
And
about that. Is
understanding there's more to it than just quarterback. But when you think about Chicago and New England right now, and I know
right.
Chicago has upgraded its weaponry when it comes to skill people, but New England, I mean, yeah, I
Who's
mean,
there?
there's
Not a
gonna
whole lot.
there's that's gonna be sort of secondary. obviously, to some other things. But it's a quarterback league. I know it's cliche as hell, but it's very true. When I look at these schedules like this, I think quarterback immediately. Okay, Miami Tua, Cleveland Deshaun. You go down the list, like you said, even with the rookie quarterbacks that are going to be on the schedule. Jalen Hurts with Philadelphia, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud twice, Will Levis. Is he the guy in Tennessee? And thinking of Tennessee from that perspective, to me, that should be a 2-0 stretch for the
Yeah.
Jaguars with the Titans. Now, kind of thought that would be the case last year. As we learned painfully, that wasn't the case.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, it's you're going to know a lot about this Jaguars team, I think, early, and also know a lot about what Trevor are we getting, he's he's been a guy that really, when he's been at his best, in that 2022 season, it was more of a stretch of games of, that kind of last like 7 or 8, he really turned it on. That's awesome. I would love for him to have a season where he opened up firing, and maybe that's all it takes for him. Maybe if he just goes out there and has 1 or 2 really good games against that Miami defense that's pretty susceptible, and then you have a good performance against a great defense in Cleveland, you can feel a lot better about things and you get the ball rolling. But you think about also some of the other position groups just to kind of hop off quarterback. That offensive line, that that Cleveland test is real. Buffalo has some really good edge rushers and in general a solid defensive line. Houston's beefed that up. That's that offensive line. We're gonna get a pretty good idea of where they're at. And then also you think about with the Miami, Buffalo, Houston games, you think about that secondary on the defensive side of the ball of, did they improve enough? Did the Jags do enough to add to it is Ronald Darby, going to help? Is Jerry Jones able to make an impact early? Those are 3 wide receiver groups that are all very, very talented.
They are. And, this is where some of the moves the Jags made in the offseason, even before the draft, with Morse, with Eric Armstead, you're right. You're absolutely correct about the Jags on the back end of that defense and how they're going to match up with some of these personnel groupings that like the Dolphins are going to put out there. And,
Yeah,
Buffalo, obviously, with Stephon Diggs moving on, but he moves on within the division. So, like, you go to Buffalo on Sunday night, September the 23rd, you don't have to see Stephon Diggs, but guess what? You see him the next week in Houston
enjoy.
with all those other pieces that the Texans have in place. Long story short, there's no simple way in the NFL. This isn't college football where you can kind of go ahead and pencil in. If you look at a 13-game schedule, 12-game
You're like,
schedule
there's
in
5
college,
games that we have locked
at
up.
least, and that's just not the case in the National Football League. Any other thoughts on the schedule, Evan, before we shift gears here on No Sleep Teal?
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing I was going to say was just that, I'm not sure if this affects, I think about like a month or so ago on an episode, we kind of went down the list of opponents and we, said win or loss, where do we kind of stand? And I got to 10-7. I don't think that the schedule layout necessarily changes that, but it does shift things a little bit when you have a start like that. So yeah, no, that's it.
Let's go down the schedule right now and add them up.
Just do it.
Season opener at Miami. I got the Jags winning that game. I think the
Okay.
Jags are going to win that game, and the sort of angst and anxiety that's similar to what some Jaguar fans have right now in relation to Trevor. It's going to be more in relation to Tua in the
Yeah.
Miami fan base. So I probably going to have to do it as an underdog. I'm sure the Jags will be underdogs on the road at Miami, but I think they get it done. I think they get it done the next week at home against the Cleveland Browns. So no Joe Flacco to have to worry about, Evan. It's
Jeez.
a big thing when you don't have to worry about Joe. So I got the Jags at 2-0. How do you got that start?
I'm gonna go 1-1. I think they drop the game against Cleveland. I know it's at home. It's
Oh,
the
so
home
you
opener.
like the Jags though on the road at
I
Miami.
like the Jags to open up. I like the logic you kind of have of there's pressure on Tua as well. And even though they have a really, really great receiver group, I like to think that the Jaguars pass rush is going to be able to have some success against that Miami offensive line.
Been a
And I
problem.
also like to think that the Jaguars offense should be able to score at least, a lot of points. I mean, we saw last year that that wasn't always the case, that they should score a lot on paper and did not, but I like their chances there. And then, so if I'm at 1-1 and you're at 2-0 through that stretch, I'll start on Buffalo and Houston. I'm gonna say my pick of the schedule: win in Buffalo. Monday night
Wow.
win in Buffalo. Yeah, two
Your
and zero
boy
on the
Dom
road to start.
Tibbetts up there. He won't like
Yeah,
that.
I'm gonna be in his ear. But the Jags have, kind of had Buffalo's number the past like 3 or 4 years. I mean, they beat them in Jacksonville and like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and then beat them in London last year. So I'm gonna say beat Buffalo. I am gonna say loss to Houston. I do think that their road luck will end there. So I'm gonna say 2-2 through the first four.
I'm gonna have them 2-2 also, but I have them 2-2 because I have them dropping the next two after Miami and Cleveland. I think it'll be a tight game at Buffalo, but on the road, I think the Bills are going to get it done, and then the same for the Texans a week later. That takes us to Indianapolis in Jacksonville on October the 6th, and then you go over to London for those two games with Chicago and New England. Looking at those three games, I got it 3-0.
Yeah, same.
So I've got the
Five and
Jags
two.
at 5-2 coming back from the
Solid.
UK.
You
Yeah.
feel good about that. 5-2. But then you come back to Green Bay. Um, man, I don't know. Green Bay might just be kind of. I have there's a part of me that thinks that they might be frauds. That they kind of caught the hot hand last year, and that they're because their roster's not that great. Like it's not that impressive of a roster. So I'm gonna say win. We're gonna say 4 consecutive win for the Jaguars. They're gonna get out of that home game against Green Bay at 6-2.
Jordan Love made a little bit of a believer out of me down the stretch in 2023, but I'm going to go with the Jags at home there. I'm with you. I'm going to go Jags at home. And boy, sitting there now at what, 6-2? If those
Yeah,
picks come to fruition, the road game at Philly on November the 3rd, I got that as an L for the
same.
Jags. So that's 6-3. But then you get Minnesota at home the following week, followed by the road game at Detroit. So 6-2 coming out of Green Bay, Philly, Minnesota at Detroit. What do you see for those?
Loss in Philly, just brutal place to play. And I think that, like you said earlier, the Eagles are going to have an edge to them. They're pissed. They expect a lot more. And Sirianni, just like Doug Peterson might be, Sirianni might be coaching for his job this upcoming season. So that's a big deal. And then the Minnesota game, I think that's is any game on the schedule, I feel as confident. That's one where I'm like, that's a must. That's got to be a win. Uh, yeah, 6-2, 6-3 after the Philly game, and then
Seven and
7-3
three
after
with the win over the
Minnesota,
Minnesota. Yeah.
and then Detroit before the bye week. I'm gonna have to say it's nil. I think Detroit might be the best team on the schedule. So 7-4 going into the bye week.
That's where I'm at. Home win against the Vikings, road loss at Detroit. You head into the Turkey Day holiday for the
Yeah.
bye week, and you gear up for that home game against those Houston Texans. I got the Jags winning there to avenge that thing earlier in the season. And I know, right, when you think about the Texans in Jacksonville, I guess it hadn't always gone well for the Jaguars.
I am, yeah, it's tough. What was we went to a game a decade plus ago, the TJ Yates or whatever. Do you remember
Yeah,
that? Two
yeah.
quarterbacks got injured and we still lost. Anyways, uh, yeah, I'm gonna go with my heart, not my brain. I'm gonna say win for the Jags at home against Houston. I do think that they lose on the road in Tennessee. That's just because we can't,
Wow.
just like how Indy can't beat us in
Because
Jacksonville.
Titans, right?
Yeah, because Titans in Nashville, we never we lay eggs up there all the time. So I'm going to say they split those division games between Houston and Tennessee. So that would put us at 8-5 going into the Jets game. Where are you at?
Yeah,
You,
I'm going with a win over the Texans, and then I'm going win over the Titans on the road. I'm all in, Ev.
I
I'm
love
all
it. I
in.
love it.
Yeah,
So you're going to be at
yeah.
I've got 8-5. You're at 9-4.
I'm at
Is what
nine
we're
and
looking at.
four after the
Yeah,
Titans game,
cooking,
but
cooking. If you're 9-4 going into the last 4 games of the
mid-December.
season, I mean, you
Yeah.
feel pretty good.
Now, I do think if Aaron Rodgers is healthy on December the 15th, that's where I'm going to go home loss for the
Yeah,
Jags. And what I may have
I
is
have
the
that.
only
I have
home
that.
loss. I'm if Aaron Rodgers, Mr. Miyagi healed Achilles holds
Yeah,
up, ET healed Achilles holds up. I might go Jets there, even though, gosh, I mean Rodgers is
he's gotta find the right ayahuasca hookup
yes,
in Florida. You know, the right bath
absolutely.
salts or whatever, and he's going to be insane. But no, I'm going to say home loss against the Jets, which now means my Jags prediction is at 8-6.
hmm
Yours is at I think 9-5
Nine
at
and
this. Or,
five.
yeah. So I'm at 8-6, but I'm going to follow up the 8-6 with 3 consecutive W's to end the year. Vegas on the road, win. Tennessee at home, win. Indy on the road, win. 11-6. That's what I'm going to finish with. That's slightly better than what I predicted about a month ago at 10-7. I'm going to say 11-6.
See, I think Vegas is going to be kind of that Jags road game that you're anticipating for Tennessee. A few
Right.
weeks earlier, it makes really little sense that the Jags should or would lose that game to the Raiders, but I'm going to go Raiders there. And then I'm going to go with the win over Tennessee and Jacksonville and then the road win at Indy. So I think we're both at 11 and
We
6.
just see different wins and
Yeah,
losses.
just a little different path in how the Jags
Hey,
get
that's
there.
a mission success for me. I would
That's
take 11-6 in a heartbeat. So, uh,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
Some pessimistic Jaguar fans out there probably not agreeing with that,
oh
but
yeah, I wouldn't blame, and I don't blame them. I get it.
yeah.
I will say a little bit disappointing about the schedule release is that as things stand, it does not seem like the throwback unis are being announced tonight.
Oh wow,
Um,
you
they
were
did
looking
the
forward
whole
to that.
Jags 95 thing, which like that was referencing X-Men 95, which is a new, or X-Men 97 or whatever, which is like a new X-Men show. Which is I haven't watched the video yet, but it seems pretty cool. Whatever. But man, I was thinking that they were going to bring out the unis, and I guess we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for those. So, yeah, we'll get them when we get them. But
NFL, they like to stage these things and kind of stagger them. Don't worry, they'll get everybody's money. They're going to get everybody's
absolutely,
money. You can count on that.
absolutely.
No doubt about that. Hey, as we shift from the
Speaking of money,
schedule reveal, yeah, money. Stadium deal presented by Jacksonville Mayor Donna Deegan and members of the Jacksonville Jaguars front office to the Jacksonville City Council on Tuesday. I guess the numbers are what they are, Evan. We've talked about this the last couple of weeks. If you're going to do business in the NFL and you're one of these host cities, that bill's going to come due eventually. And we talked about this in relation to the Bills, Buffalo Bills.
yeah,
It's pretty similar. I think the Bills Stadium is in that 1.4 billion neighborhood. The Jags are in that 1.4, and it's never going to be a 50-50 split because
yeah,
essentially the NFL owners have it in that they're not going to do 50-50s. It's always going to be at least 55 towards the
yeah,
city, the host town, with the ownership paying a max really of 45. And that's what it looks like we've got with the Jaguar ownership and the city of Jacksonville. And some of the comments from city council members on Tuesday, we hit those too, I think, in that, I have serious questions
right,
about this deal. But I think most people expect at this point that it's going to get approved. It just needs a majority vote. It's not a unanimous vote that's required. I think 10-9 is all you need or something like that.
Right.
And that could happen, I guess, as soon as the end of next month.
Yeah. The exact number split is the city will pay 775 million, and the Jags will pay 625. So, like you were saying, pretty, yeah, at least that 55-45, probably a little closer to 60-40. Um, that sounds about right. I mean, 1.4 billion is an eye-watering number, but by NFL franchise standards, it's this is just kind of the big investments you make. Um, we'll say that it is interesting to think about. Mark Lamping kind of spoke. The president of the Jaguars kind of spoke on the situation yesterday, and did kind of say that technically the Jags do have to get this approved by the NFL as well. It's not just the city council can't approve, but the NFL also has to be able to roll with it. So there are maybe multiple hurdles, not just the one
I kind
left.
of took that as a message to the city council that the numbers are what the numbers are. If you
Right.
think the numbers are going to shift any
Yeah.
more towards the team, that's not
They're
going to
not.
happen because
Yeah.
the owners aren't going to approve a deal that isn't at least 55% to the city as far as
Yeah.
the money that's in play here. So
Well, and also the I think another message to the city is there were I don't know the exact number, but the people in attendance for the city council meeting uh when they proposed the deal, and then like several times throughout it, the crowd was just clapping, like applause, cheering, all that different stuff. It's I know that you can't just make political decisions based on clapping and cheering and applause, but that should also be a sign that it's like, if you think that the people that are paying attention don't want this to happen, you're wrong. Like the majority of the city definitely wants this to happen. Definitely wants the Jags to build something that isn't just nice for the Jags, but this is truly, based on these sketches and all the different stuff. I mean, this truly looks like, SoFi Stadium levels of futuristic, maybe even more so. So,
and SoFi
for this,
Stadium, by the way, 5.5 billion
yeah,
when that was all said and done. And one thing I do like, and I think the Bills have this as well in their deal with that area, is that cost overruns because I think the Bills are already encountering this. I think the Bill Stadium has already gone from 1.4 to 1.7
yeah,
billion, but the team, the Bills are covering the cost overruns, as I understand it. I think the Jags, from what I've read on this deal, would be in that same position. But there's certainly going to be a lot of politics leading up to it. I think it's a formality, in my opinion. But sure, I mean, as you heard from City Council President Ron Salem to the other members of the council when this was presented, he said, "This is a lot of information to digest, and I'm sure many of you have questions as I do." I mean, that's politics. I mean, that's
yeah. It's the most. It's like it's the
posturing.
politician version of the
Yeah,
quarterback saying
you're not being
we
reckless. Yeah.
the quarterback saying is like, well, we just take it play by play and day by day, and we just go out there and just try to get better every time.
Ron
It's an oh yeah, a little comment.
Ron chiming in says you have to spend money to make money. If we look at the events that will come, this is a good deal. And it's a good point, Ron, because you have to take in other factors that we've talked about. Obviously, Florida, Georgia. In that regard, Evan, I thought it was interesting. 63,000 seats for this stadium, expandable to 71 for Florida, Georgia. So, in some ways, not all that different than what's
Yeah,
been in play with
yeah,
the current structure. And, it's been noted perhaps the college football playoff at some point, perhaps um, Final Fours, college basketball Final Fours. And typically, this entails the NFL throwing maybe a Super Bowl your way. That's what happened the first time around. We'll see
right.
if that's in play with this second go. But Ron, we appreciate the
Yeah,
input,
for sure.
no
No,
doubt about it.
definitely. There's a part of me as somebody who loves soccer. I wish they had gotten this done maybe 3 years ago, or a little bit faster, because then the World Cup coming in 2026, that would have been,
Mhm.
Potential venue for a semifinal or something. But yeah, Super Bowl for sure. And then yeah, you think about definitely college football playoff. I mean, Jacksonville. We talk all the time about how Jacksonville is a college football town still in so many ways, and that makes a lot of sense. Maybe not for the Natty, but maybe for a semifinal or something like that. I would love to see that. Um,
You've played
but
college
yeah,
football playoff games in Indianapolis. You've played them in Santa Clara.
yeah.
Um, I would think Jacksonville perhaps could be in play at some point down the road, especially as this college football playoff continues to expand, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, at this point, you got to find places to play.
it's pretty
you know,
much been in Atlanta, LA,
New Orleans.
New Orleans, Miami tournament to
Yeah,
this point. Maybe that's going to change now with the
yeah.
expansion of the college football playoff. And also, Evan, what about the Jacksonville Jaguars relocating for a season, essentially, where home games are concerned? We had thrown around some possibilities in some previous shows here, but it came to our attention with this reveal of the stadium deal that's in place that it's either Orlando or Gainesville. So Evan Reier gets to pick. Is it Orlando or Gainesville for you?
You know what I think makes the most sense from in almost every aspect of doing this is Gainesville. I think that
Proximity. Yeah.
this is a moment for the Jags to further develop their fan base in those towns. It's not that they don't, of course they know the Jags exist or whatever, but college kids that go to Gainesville, college kids that go to UF, there's kids coming from all over. They can go to Jags games in town on campus right there. That's not a bad thing. I think that you're going to have better crowds in Gainesville than you would in Orlando, just because I think that there's a kind of an energy there that people would just appreciate being able to go to an NFL game in Gainesville. Whereas Orlando, there's a little bit more going on, and they kind of struggle with their pro sports teams to sell tickets, even when the Magic have been good. They've struggled. So I think it's Gainesville in every sense. It's closer, of course, to Jacksonville, not by a huge amount, but definitely closer. And aesthetically wise, I mean, the swamp. I mean, it's a swamp. It's like if you pack that place out and you get that place loud, it's going to be insane compared to Camping World Stadium or whatever in Orlando. It's one place is a legendary football venue that just about any football fan knows, and the other is the a bowl game site. So I don't see how, other than maybe finances, how Gainesville doesn't make more sense.
Yeah, I hear you, and there's some natural crossover you would think, because University of Florida, hotbed for college football, obviously the passion of the SEC. I guess in terms of the market, as far as selling tickets locally, you're still talking about college kids that typically don't have the kind of money that's required to attend NFL games. Now, maybe the tickets become a little more easier to access from that
I think no
standpoint.
matter what they do, there better be a discount on the tickets that year. Like, if you're a Jaguar
Mm.
season ticket holder, you should be paying I would
That's going to
almost
be
say,
fascinating because the NFL, even in comparison to 20 years ago, they don't do much in the way of discounts anymore, do they?
I know, but it's just on pure principle. This is what I believe. Now, how instead what they're going to do is go the other way. This is a rare, once in a life, special, special $300 get in price. Sorry,
Just think
uh,
you're in London. Pretend you're in London.
you're in beautiful Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah.
Now, I
I
mean,
like Gainesville for the simple reason that they built the Stark bypass, man. Now
yeah,
that they've got that Stark bypass, I can get to Gainesville in an hour. It
that's
saves
what I
me an
mean.
extra 20 minutes. So give me Gainesville over Orlando. It's still Orlando to me is still the longest 2.45 drive
Traffic
in the
there is
world.
awful,
I don't want
awful.
anything to do with I-4. I don't care if it is Sundays and you say, look, these tourists, they don't take they're every day that ends with Y. Okay. So just give me Gainesville. I understand the Jags or the NFL would have to build new visiting team locker rooms down there at UF. I guess, accessibility to the stadium and everything in Orlando, probably easier because UCF plays on campus. You don't have another tenant playing
Yeah.
football, and you don't have to maybe adapt schedules logistically. From that perspective, there's some things that might be easier, but yeah, I'd rather just make that drive to Gainesville than
I will
Orlando.
say in the for the aspect of traffic, I mean, we have family members that go to Gainesville pretty much
Hmm.
every home game. And while of course there are some weekends that are better than others, that is a place that when you do big college football games, there's typically more fans than a NFL game.
Yeah,
Bigger stadiums.
huge
The Swamp
stadium,
is bigger, has a higher capacity than Everbank.
90 grand or so. Yeah,
Yeah, so I like to think that they are going to be able to logistically
it's just a
plan.
1 year thing,
Yeah,
so they've got time. I mean, we're still 3 or 4 years out, so it
be
should be
interesting.
something they can work through. But Orlando or Gainesville, something else too. The Jags with the 30-year lease
Yeah.
that doesn't allow them to relocate. I'm not crazy about the London games continuing. That kind of that rubs me the wrong way. I get it. I know why it's done. I've been to London for a Jags game. I had a hell of a good time. I would encourage people to go if they haven't done it. That being said, just and now that it's a 2 week thing, even if the Jags are a visiting team in the second, just something I'm not crazy about. Ev.
No, for sure. I totally get that, and it actually kind of. I'm glad you brought that up. The London games because it actually affects our schedule this year in an interesting way. The Jaguars do not have back-to-back games in Jacksonville this season.
Wow,
They do not have a stretch or
back to
back-to-back
backs,
games where they are both playing in Jacksonville. They technically the only I believe maybe the only two-game home stretch that they have is the Patriots game because it's technically a home game in London, and then when they come back to play
Green
Indy,
Bay.
that is
It's Green
a
Bay.
home game. So
Yeah,
yeah, it is a weird setup. Typically, you at least get one little stretch where you have two home games back to back, but due to London, they're it's not really happening. I
the
don't think
state.
that matters a whole lot, but it is interesting to point out.
Boy, the stadium deal, it kind of took the wind out of the sails out of the Jags are moving
Yeah. Oh
crew
yeah.
every year.
No, I want to I want to say something very vulgar to Jason Lecanfora, but I'm not going to. Just the dumbest guy in the world. I'll say that. And
He's got company though.
He does. Oh, he does. But he was the dude that throughout my high school years, throughout
Formative.
Twitter,
Yeah.
just always. And I've enjoyed watching Jaguars fans hop in his mention this week to be like, "Hey, Jason, what do you think?" And Jason's argument is that COVID somehow prevented.
Sure.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Who
You
cares?
bet. You bet Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah, yeah.
who he excoriates on social media, by the way. Oh
Yeah.
boy. That
But
social media.
overall, schedule release day, new stadium plans, everything is feeling pretty good. The vibes are
Absolutely.
nice,
Other than the throwbacks.
other than the lack of throwbacks.
You
But
didn't get your
hey, like you said,
throwbacks
we'll get
today.
those when we get those.
And we will. And we'll be here to talk about it right here on No Sleep Till. Evan Reier, Travis Reier. If you haven't already, subscribe to our little channel here. It is at Grateful Sports Food Travel. We'd love for you to do that. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all our shows as they drop right here. Hit a like button for us if you don't mind as well. Evan, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I think that's it.
And that's a wrap. For Evan Reier, I'm Travis Reier. Thanks again for joining us right here on No Sleep Till. And until next week, so long, everybody.
See ya.